Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. I'm Jessica, 36 female, a medical doctor who thought she had it all figured out. After dating for 6 months, I decided to settle down with the love of my life, Marcus, 32 male, an engineer. My family thought I was rushing things, but Marcus and I loved each other. Or so I thought. As a doctor, my demanding career kept me away from home more often than I would like. At first, Marcus seemed completely understanding of my schedule, but that all changed when he lost his job 5 months after our wedding. To make matters even more complicated, a week later, he had a mysterious accident that left him in a wheelchair. Initially, I believed it was a genuine accident. But looking back now, I realize the signs were there, and I should have been more skeptical. Marcus insisted he had fallen down the stairs, and with his apparent disability, he became dependent on me for everything. There was no logical reason for me not to believe him at the time, so I took on the responsibility of paying all the bills, as he couldn't find a job due to his so-called injury. It seemed like the right thing to do to support my husband in a time of need. The real trouble began when Marcus decided to invite his sister, Helen, 24, to stay with us without consulting me. In his defense, he thought he mentioned it and it only made sense to have someone to help him out while I was working. I was upset, but he was right. At the time, I thought he was doing it to help me, but I was so wrong. Back in the days when Marcus and I were still in the getting to know each other phase, Helen and I were like water and oil. She had this knack of giving me the side eye, as if we were locked in some secret competition. But let me tell you, I had a full-time job being an overworked doctor. I had no time for her championship of silly games. All I wanted was a healthy and happy relationship and a skyrocketing career. Not to win the gold medal in the sister-in-law Olympics. I mean, seriously, who had the energy for that kind of nonsense? I had patients to tend to, not sibling rivalry to conquer. Despite my exhausting shifts at the hospital, Marcus made me do all the household chores, including cleaning, cooking, and grocery shopping. It was emotionally draining, but I was honestly afraid of losing him. As days turned into weeks, my pleas for Helen's assistance became a recurring script in our strained household drama. I would muster up the courage to approach her, hoping she would finally understand the strain I was under. Helen, however, had a talent for theatrics. She would sigh dramatically, often in a manner that could rival any Oscar-winning performance, and give a weary excuse that left me feeling like I was carrying the weight of the entire household on my shoulders. Marcus was not even helping matters. He pretended like Helen did a mountain of work when I wasn't around, and I didn't want to seem like the nagging wife. Helen's attitude towards her presence in our home was nothing short of shocking. She managed to spin it as if she were doing me a grand favor by being there with Marcus, as if I should be eternally grateful for her presence. It was baffling, to say the least. What struck me as particularly odd was her assertion that she had better things to do with her time. I mean, weren't they siblings? One would expect a certain level of familial support and understanding, especially during tough times. Instead, she painted a picture as though she was some benevolent benefactor sacrificing her precious time for Marcus's sake. It was infuriating, especially considering that I provided her with everything she needed during her stay. But what irked me even more was the fact that I didn't want her in my house in the first place. While Marcus was supposedly confined to his wheelchair, I noticed some inconsistencies in his behavior. He would occasionally shift his legs or move them while he thought I wasn't watching. But Marcus was clever. When I asked for us to go for a checkup, he convinced me that these movements were involuntary reflexes and muscle spasms caused by his fall. He played the victim card well, and my heart ached for him. Of course, love blinded my logic even in my field of expertise. After 2 months of enduring the emotional turmoil at home, I finally had a glimmer of hope. I had successfully secured the promotion I had been tirelessly working for, and it felt like the right time to bring a little joy back into our lives. I decided to do something special. I bought a bottle of wine and came home early to surprise Marcus with the news. It had been so long since we had a genuine moment of happiness. and I hoped this would help us reconnect. As I quietly entered our home, the sight that met my eyes left me in shock. There was Marcus not in his wheelchair, but standing in our living room, looking perfectly capable of walking. He was engrossed in conversation with his sister, Helen, as they enjoyed themselves. I hid in the shadows listening to their conversation, and it all became painfully clear. Marcus had been deceiving me all along. His supposed wheelchair-bound state was a ruse to manipulate me and take advantage of my hard work. I overheard their discussion about how to further exploit me emotionally and financially. Helen told Marcus that I was lucky to have him because I was an old hag who couldn't find another man. She encouraged him to continue exploiting me because she believed women of my age would not do anything about it. I was so heartbroken. They had played me for a big fool and I needed to teach them a lesson. In secret, I consulted a divorce lawyer and began planning my exit strategy. Gathering evidence against Marcus's unwillingness to find a job, his fake disability, Helen's intrusion into our lives, and the emotional abuse I had endured was a meticulous and emotionally taxing process. But it was necessary to build a strong case for the impending legal battle. As the legal proceedings finally began, I was determined to stay calm and collected. I swear they must have attended a How to Annoy Jessica 101 workshop when I wasn't looking, because it was almost like they doubled the whole workload, demanding for things like toddlers. One day, Marcus, with all the subtlety of a bullhorn in a library, asked if I could buy him a PlayStation 5 since he claimed to be bored at home. I had to bite my lip to stop myself from bursting into hysterical laughter. I mean, here I was, juggling my medical career, cooking, cleaning, and managing the entire household's finances, and he wanted a gaming console. I managed to hold myself back, knowing that a bigger showdown was looming on the horizon. The day finally came when I decided that I couldn't take their antics anymore. Armed with divorce papers in one hand and eviction notices in the other, I strolled into the living room like a one-woman legal parade. Marcus and Helen were so caught off guard, they looked like a pair of bewildered deer caught in the headlights of my paperwork-driven wrath. I handed them the eviction notices and divorce papers, emphasizing that I was the one paying the rent for the house and that they had to leave immediately. Marcus's eyes widened and Helen's jaw dropped so low. I half expected it to hit the floor with a comical booing sound effect. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but one thing was clear. I had had enough. Marcus and Helen were left in a state of shock. Their pleas and apologies fell on deaf ears. They kept begging that they had nowhere to go. Apparently, Helen was even homeless and had no job. I told them I did not care and they could go and beg for all I care. It's been a week now. Marcus has been calling me non-stop for days, asking me for forgiveness and swearing to get a job. He said he's been struggling and he has nowhere to stay. He sounds very convincing. What's worse, I've just discovered that I'm over 3 months pregnant. I'm torn between accepting Marcus back for the sake of our child and continuing with the divorce. What do you think? Should I proceed with the divorce despite the pregnancy, or should I give Marcus another chance for the sake of our unborn child? Update. I met Marcus today because he wouldn't stop coming to my house to beg for forgiveness, and I served him and his sister a cease and desist letter. After careful consideration and discussions with my lawyer, I've decided to proceed with the divorce. My priority is the well-being of my child, and I believe that a toxic environment with Marcus and Helen is not the right place to raise a child. I don't know yet if I want Marcus to have access to the child, but with time I'll know. My family has been very accommodating during this period, providing me with all the emotional support I need. I'm sorry this happened to you, OP. Marcus and his sister took advantage of you and they would have continued to do so until there was nothing left. Marcus is a lazy, manipulative a-hole. The fact that he faked being in a wheelchair for months, just so you could do everything and take care of him, says a lot about him. He even brought his sister to come and enjoy too while you work yourself raw both at work and home. I'm glad you're finally free of him. You're right. Raising a child with Marcus and Helen would be terrible. Cutting them both off is the right decision to make. Please use this experience wisely. Never forget the red flags. Story 2. Husband and I were financially well off in 2019. Shit turned sour in 2020 when I became jobless after having to homeschool our kids. Couldn't afford the rent. We got evicted 6 months later. My mother-in-law, who offered us 2 bedrooms, backed out as soon as we became homeless. And we ended up living out of our van for 4 months with our kids before a homeless shelter opened up. During said time, mother-in-law had very little contact with us. Sister-in-law was also tense from us asking to come to her house to shower, despite us offering payment. We were looked at like we were scum because we were over the age of 30, had 3 kids and didn't have our shit together. We were told how we were going about life all wrong and that if we had planned better, we wouldn't be in this situation. Coming from sister-in-law mostly, who was given her house after her father died and hadn't paid taxes in 4 years. Fast forward, we were able to get back on our feet 10 times. We built a house from scratch with our kids and gained a shit ton of experience for all of us. It came out perfect. The kids are ecstatic because they built their own house. We are happier than ever. We even started our own business. We did this together without help from any of his family, despite their promises, and I will admit that I grew a nasty taste in my mouth about the whole lot of them, despite the end result turning out the way it did. Well, mother-in-law is down and out currently. She was moved to PT employment due to her slow-paced work style. Her retirement was taken away apparently after the government stripped it from them and will likely be evicted soon, as she has already received 2 notices and a lease termination letter. She came here yesterday afternoon and asked us if she could stay here if she became evicted. I will admit that my first reaction was to outright laugh at her and her audacity. She looked immediately offended and uncomfortable, especially after I stated there wasn't a chance of that happening. My husband just stood beside me with his arms crossed, glaring at his mother, as he is very resentful of her allowing her grandchildren to live out of a van and homeless shelter after promises had already been made. Anyways, she left crying after saying the situation was entirely different. Sister-in-law, however, called us later and said that we were effing trash for not allowing her soon-to-be evicted elderly mother to move in. My only response was that a nursing home just opened up down the street and she couldn't go there. However, a few friends said that it was kind of mean. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole, OP. There is something to be said about being the better person when you're treated terribly by someone. But I genuinely worry about this woman having an impact on your little one's happiness and mental health even if you let her stay. I don't think you should be blamed for being angry at her for essentially forcing your children to experience homelessness when she could have at least taken them in. Now for some comments. Not the a-hole. Sister-in-law can take her in then. I'm not a religious person, the opposite. But treat others how you would like to be treated is something everyone can live by. She can't throw the family card down now because she is the one who needs help, when she ignored it when it was you that needed help. First of all, good for you for managing to turn a bad situation around. It's not easy. Secondly, you are definitely not the a-hole. When I ended up divorced with 2 young kids, I never worried that my parents would leave me high and dry. I would have walked across hot coals for them. You don't forget who was there to lift you up in your lowest moments. And you also don't forget who kicked you when you were down. While it seems spiteful of you both to reject her in a time of need, the spite was well earned on account of her rejection of your family in eerily similar circumstances. Even if you try to be the bigger person or try to model the behavior you want to receive, I can't see how letting this viper into your home could possibly end well. She sucks moose dong. I hope sister-in-law can make some room. She sounds keen to assist. Not the a-hole.